I've seen that progress is not always vertical. It could be horizontal, and you should always introspect and see not just what you're good at, but also what you're not good at.
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership with one of the contributors to my latest book, the best-selling CISO Compass: Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, as well as other top CISOs and industry security leaders. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com. I am your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Rajesh David, VP Global CISO at Molex and Koch Industries.
I stumbled across the field of cybersecurity 22 years ago. I, came to this beautiful country to pursue my master's degree in electrical and computer science, and I found myself, out late night eating a nice dinner somewhere, and I called some campus safety folks to come and pick me up from this place. And it was like a squad car, and the guy gave me a ride back and kind of yelled at me for not following protocols and not being back on campus. But during that short 15-20 minute commute, he told me a little bit about some of the challenges the university was facing in terms of some websites and some security issues, and asked me to come and talk to him more the following day, which I did, and got my first on-campus job doing some security for the campus website. And lo and behold, 22 years later, this is my fifth time being a CISO, and I promised my wife this is the last time. For any fellow CISO, the battle scars and everything else that we all have to endure. But yeah, I've never looked back. And on the more serious note, I choose this as something I willingly want to do, and highly encourage anyone else looking to be a CISO that do it for the right reasons. It's more of a vocation. Don't think of it as a job. You got to give back to the community and be willing to be at your best day in and day out. It's one of those jobs where you have to be wanting to do it.
Well, I think that's a great start, and I hear that from so many people that they sort of fell into it, but then they loved it. And 5 different CISO jobs. That's so you must be doing something right.
Yeah, I will say. And having done this for multiple times, I have just seen the whole playing field evolve and change, from CISO being the technical guy in the room where people come ask for firewall rule changes, to all the way to being a strategist and having a voice and a seat at the table with your CEO, really being that value creator. I think that's been the massive shift in the paradigm of how CISOs operate, and that's the reason why I continue to pick this field. It's never been the same industry for me in this past 22 years. It's never been the same set of problems, and from highly regulated companies to private companies, it's just fascinating to me how the field has changed. And again, we as a community have also done a great job in evolving the role and being an advocate of what cybersecurity really means in this day and age, where it's just cost of doing business. Be a business enabler, be a strategist, and continue to be the best advocate for us as a community.
So how does one do that? How do you come up from technical skill beginnings and the whole firewall situation, and now you've become now you're dealing with strategy. What sort of things do you have to learn to make that transition?
For me personally, I would say from very early days, I've always owned my own career trajectory, and I've through help with great mentors, and I think you've been one of them, Todd. I've always looked up to you with what you've done in the community. I've seen that progress is not always vertical. It could be horizontal, and you should always introspect and see not just what you're good at, but also what you're not good at. And for me, having started off as a very technical person, dabbling in the ethical hacking field and literally managing firewalls for a hospital, I very quickly realized that I have this penchant of being a supervisor and really understanding the business and what is the business trying to achieve, and then create a story of how will the cyber program help you. And in my second CISO job, actually the second cybersecurity job, I was very closely aligned to the CISO I was working with, and I found this natural inclination for me to have that business talks and be that liaison between the technical teams and the leadership. And again, spoke to some good people and started putting uh, modifying my professional development plan and identifying what are the areas that I need to get better at. And again, I thankfully for me, I came from the technical ranks, and the field around me was evolving. And I slowly but surely started checking off the boxes of all the soft skills I probably needed to get better at, to be able to be seen as a good value creator in the business.
Good. So it's good to have a plan like that. So today we're talking about global security programs and leading a global security program, and still managing things locally. So walk us through that. Tell us a little bit about what that entails.
Yeah, and that's the way I look at it, because you titles only mean so much in a company. It's actually where do you sit in the organization, and what kind of say do you have in the direction that the company moves towards. When you work for a company, and I'll give you my current role, where I'm the global CISO for Molex, which is we are a global company which enables technology and transforms through digital transformation programs. We operate in more than 40 countries and got 50,000 employees globally. And Coke is our like a foundation is built on Coke Industries, which has 122,000 employees and 150 billion in revenue. The reason I gave you all this information is there is a need to think global in every aspect of the program, but we have to deliver locally. And what that means is, the word that comes to my mind is composable security architecture. I've seen programs have leveraged capabilities, and you outsource your SOC, and you have all these overarching layer of security that people are going to consume from a corporate level, speaking from my experience in GE Capital. But then in this new world of edge computing and localized needs, with different different governments in Asia Pacific and Europe and everywhere else, you have to cater to the local business of how you do it. And that's, I feel, is the biggest challenge for global CISOs. One size doesn't fit all. And how do you create these pockets of security capabilities which aligns with what Gartner calls composable architecture? And how do you align your program to be consumed in that way? So that's one of my big key bets that I have, here at Molex to deliver on.
So do you have different implementations in the different countries, or are you developing global programs that reach across the different countries?
Yeah, so we do have a global program. It's the latter, what you said. We have a global program, we have a global footprint, we have regional teams within all the different countries we operate. Where I do see that we need to continue to evolve is customizing it to that country, to that specific region, and really tweaking your security reference architecture to match, what this industrial 4.0 is all about, and how do they take some advantaged capabilities that's going to put Molex at the forefront of all our competitors, and how do you tack along, a cyber capability that truly is a value differentiator for the company in this day and age. So I think it's a work in progress. I've been with Molex under 6 months, really figuring out the lay of the land, and really happy to be part of this team. And also, as I said, the foundation is Koch, KOCH, spelled not the Coke fountain drink, but Koch brothers and what they've built. And it's a really fascinating industry to be in a highly matrixed organization, and deliver on something that will be unique to this industry.
Where do you see the biggest challenges globally, country-wise, in terms of trying to get the security initiatives in place?
So if you'd asked me this question 6 months ago when I was joining Molex, it would probably been a different answer, and probably more aligned to what every 2 out of 5 CISOs you ask is the talent shortage, and finding the right skill set, and making sure you've got folks at a certain degree of maturity who can understand the complexity, including the differences in culture of how do you work together and embrace change. But right now, if you ask me, it's just this massive pace at which AI is rolling out, and how companies are embracing it, and how they're using use cases and experimenting I feel is the biggest challenge for me and my team. I wasn't surprised that this would happen. We've all been talking about it, for the past few years. And, I think at one point I was worried about quantum computing and what that would mean. And this just came out of nowhere. And the adoption has been so fast that I don't think any CISO has an answer of what to do at this point, other than to wait, watch, put guardrails, and just probably embrace it and really be a leader in this space. And, as the old saying goes in our cybersecurity field, it's not a matter of, how, but when, right? You just have to be prepared for the day, and now just have another vector to be informed about, and probably use it to fend off, similar attacks that will come our way.
The article this podcast is based upon can be viewed in the best-selling cybersecurity leadership book, CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers. So the CISO is usually the first person to put the brakes on these things when new technologies come out. When the phones came out in more mass appeal, put the brakes on until we could figure it out, and put policies in place for bring your own device into our environments. A lot of CISOs say, well, wait a minute, we're not going to allow that yet till we can figure it out. So same thing with cloud computing, everything else. We're the first ones to say, stop, we need to pause here. So are you pausing there, or are you saying, well, let's let it evolve and then we'll figure it out once the cat's out of the box?
Definitely the latter. And, hopefully I'm not that big of an outlier in the CISO community, but I've never been the guy who's put a brake on anything. And I don't want to touch wood here or knock on something, but I've always been that guy that, I'll never come to the table and say no to anyone. And it's a forbidden word, even in my team. And maybe it goes back to me working 7 years in a Japanese company where that word just didn't exist in the dictionary. You would sit and make, and it goes both ways. I would ask for a security budget and I would not get a yes or a no. And it's just, you just have to figure out how quickly or how slowly are you getting across your message. But I've always encouraged my team, I've encouraged myself, come with an alternate solution. So fast forward to now, if I can't tell them or I can't tell the business, here's an alternate, safer way of embracing AI, I'm not going to stop experimentation. And so whether it be cloud computing, whether it be AI, machine learning, whatnot, I share best practices. I've been probably attending as many knowledge share sessions as I can with my fellow CISOs and CIOs. More importantly, the CIO community, because I feel that's where I get a lot of different point of view than what I get from CISOs. I think we all are great at encouraging each other and patting each other on the back. Great job, because we know what we deal with day in and day out. But the reality check is when you go speak to the CFO and you go speak to the CIO and see what kind of a mismatch is there between what you're proposing and what they feel the value we are adding. So whether it be the summits from Gartner in Chicago or globally, I always make it a point to attend the CIO summits to just get that alternate viewpoint.
What's been your biggest disagreement that you've had with a CIO and trying to implement some security controls that they just said, no, that's just not going to work?
Yeah, I would say, just putting the title aside for a moment, it's, whoever I worked for, throughout my career, I think the biggest disagreements that I've ever had is, I would say, the pace at which certain changes probably needed to be rolled out, whether it be a control, whether it be a spend on your certain program. And that's where I feel, the CISO always has this tough act of juggling, the value to the business and what kind of returns the business is going to get for that investment against a metric that you can generate of what happens if you don't do it, right? So every proposal you put out there, you got to call out the opportunity cost. Or, when I was working in a hospital, it's like if I ask the chief operating officer for $1 to be spent on a security control, that could have gone towards buying some medical supplies for our patients. So it's always a tough ask of the money spend. And there's competing priorities, right, Todd? I mean, you just know it, that some leaders are driven by optimizing spend and maintaining a budget, whereas, the CISO always has to balance the risk. And very rarely, have I had the opportunity to be a revenue generating cost center or a P&L, even though I aspire to do that. And I've always, as I've evolved to be more of a business leader in an organization, I make bold claims that, maybe my team will start generating revenue for the company, and it don't always have to be a cost center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very difficult to do. So when we look at all the different laws that are around the world and the privacy regulations and everything that comes into play, how do you operate globally and manage the relationships with China and Russia and we look at France and Sweden in Germany are more restrictive and for valid reasons with the history. in those different areas. How do we navigate a global program when we have those different kinds of constraints?
Yeah, I would say you can't ignore it. You have to make necessary investments in these regional programs. And as I mentioned, there is no one size fits all. I've been fortunate to have worked in three different roles where the the cultural aspect of how you do businesses in these countries is equally important, along with the laws and regulations. I actually even had an opportunity to hire a skill set within the cybersecurity team, and we literally call them the cybersecurity lawyer. Person with a law degree, but very much attuned to what a CISO wants to do, and we bridge that gap between a security operations person who's trying to figure out what controls can and cannot be rolled out in a country versus mapping to what can and what you can and cannot do. And just Facebook or Meta facing a $1.2 billion fine recently for a well-known EU GDPR policy that has been out there forever just goes to show that companies will make calculated risk bets on how much money can we make in the interim before the law catches up to us. And that's
for 10
also
years. 10
for
years
10
they've been
years.
making money.
Yeah, and I feel that's where the CISO has to evolve his thinking, right? You just can't go and tell the business about thou shalt not do it, because the business is smart and they make calculated risk. I still remember walking into a meeting with a very senior executive in a company, and I explained to them the fines that we might inherit if you don't implement a certain control or a program. And the executive didn't hesitate for a moment and tell me, it's so small that I'd rather take the risk and we'll deal with it when the law catches up to us. And I'm not saying it's illegal or unethical, but it's just business. This is how business runs today. It's very competitive, and CISOs have to be ready for those kind of discussions.
I also teach sometimes the ISACA's CISM certification exam, the Certified Information Security Manager. And one of the things that actually surprised me when I read it is that was in the ISACA materials that making a legal compliance choice is a choice for an organization, and it's a risk-based choice, and you can make that choice. You can decide, I'm going to take that risk, and maybe I won't get fined. It's always a dangerous thing because we all know the old story with Ford way back when with the Ford Pinto, and they decided to take the risk of not fixing and not recalling all the cars because the cost was cheaper if they had to go to court and pay out the settlements than it was to actually fix the Ford Pintos. But the juries turned around and said, wait a minute, you can't put that kind of value on human life. We can't say at the time, I think it was like $200,000 they valued a human life at. And so they penalized Ford in a big way and multiplied out those damages to teach a lesson to say you can't do those things. So we always have to be careful where these decisions are being made. But your point is spot on. We make these risk-based decisions every day.
Yeah. And I feel these kind of risks, whatever risk-adjusted decision-making framework you use gets amplified in certain verticals, right? In my 5 times being CISO, I worked in healthcare, pharma, higher ed, manufacturing, hospital settings, finance, and I always evaluate, some of those decisions that I was part of in one vertical, it would lead to financial loss, right? But nothing comes close to loss of life. So, when you're in a hospital or in a health system, nothing beats that, and that's what I've seen consistent, whether you're taking a PMP exam or you're taking an ISACA exam. I say that with a little jest because, as I was getting these certifications early on in my career, I continued to compare that to real world scenarios. And most oftentimes, I would have to pick the answer, which I would not do in my real life to actually pass the certification. And, even my project management, projects behind on schedule, you're way over budget. And then comes a holiday in India, and you have the choice of asking them to work for a little while or on a holiday, or what would you do? The exam will tell you respect the culture and make sure you're doing the right thing by the local jurisdiction. But true business will say, no, that's not how American project management works. If you're already behind schedule, pay them overtime, get it done. So it's like, what do you pick? As the answer. And so, but life safety, nothing trumps that. And I'm fortunate to work for Coke and Molex, where every decision we make, all risk adjusted decisions, we always put safety in our plants and global sides ahead of everything else.
Absolutely. Well, this has been great, Rajesh, and I really enjoyed our time together here. What final advice would you give CISOs, emerging CISOs, current CISOs, experienced CISOs, as they're building out global security programs?
I'm going to channel Ted Lasso here, and I'll say be a goldfish. I think you have to have that ability to leave some of your losses behind. Every day is a fresh day, and come back, be excited, show up every day to work, and stay current. Speak to different CISOs and see what it takes to be in this job. The tenure of CISOs, I know people say, is very short, and some of it is financially driven. But I would say take your time, get into a company, really understand the business, and don't hesitate to put your hand up and ask some basic questions, and lead your program from a business mindset. Find out what problem is the business trying to solve. Where can you add value? Where can you actually assist the business in uplifting their revenue? And if you ask me specifically about the CISO, that's the job in a nutshell. You should have a good, talented team that'll help you with NIST assessments and ISO assessments, putting the control assurance function. But you as a CISO has to be that business-facing leader in the company who people are willingly inviting to discussions to share more about the business, and not be that guy that if he finds out about it, our project's going to get delayed. So, that's and again, I said, be a goldfish. We won't always hear what we want to hear. We'll face our challenges, and to quote my wife, she says, the world is run by the people who show up and make your presence felt and ask those right questions and keep forging forward for the betterment of our community.
Well, very well articulated. I couldn't have said it better yourself, and I'm not even going to try to say it better than your wife. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Todd.
Visit more CISO Stories podcasts on securityweekly.com, where you will find an index of prior episodes. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com.